Welcome to the Unstuck and Unstoppable podcast, where we help you move your life forward. Now, if you've ever felt alone or isolated, or just like you don't have any quality friendships and relationships in your life, you're listening to and watching the right episode of our podcast today. My name is Jimn. I am here with Jolea Garza.
Yes, this is going to be a great topic.
Yes.
I'm like, this is always a good conversation to have.
Super excited. This is really, I believe, going to help some people. And look, I want to welcome you if you're watching by YouTube. Thank you for joining us. If you're listening to us through the podcast, wherever it is you consume the content, we always consider it a privilege that you would spend time with us each and every week. If you're brand new to the podcast, a new episode drops every week. And so if you will subscribe to the podcast, you'll get a new episode delivered right to wherever it is you consume this content. We are so thrilled to have people join us.
Absolutely.
We work really hard for the content to really make an impact.
Absolutely.
And so delighted that you would join us. Hey, let's dive right into what the topic is. You know, I think when you and I were talking, we were talking about why people get stuck or what's happening, and there's really a pandemic, or I wouldn't even say that word, but like there's this crisis of people who are alone and isolated.
Yeah, and I think it really did rear its head when we had forced isolation, you know. I think we all experienced it coming out of it. Like, man, I didn't realize how much I needed friendships and relationships. And before that, you had social media, so it's just a lot of different changes in the way that we react in our society. And so 100%. I think it's good to talk about this.
It is. Well, and here's what I would say too as we start this conversation: digital connection is not relational intimacy.
Wow. Thank God you said it. Yeah.
So I think that's where this podcast, what we're really going to work on is understanding that you can be digitally connected, but relationally disconnected.
Yeah. And this is definitely a place where, you know, I think I love having this conversation because it's something for me and, you know, maybe for business owners who are used to just drive in to get things done and making things happen. And you look behind you and you're like, where are the people that I'm supposed to be doing life with? Where are the people that I can call and just, you know, connect with and be vulnerable with? And so I love that we're going to have a conversation about maybe how to restart this, because we've been trapped in a world of social media and likes 100%. And surface level communication.
Well, and I think that's where we have to address it, because again, our whole purpose of this podcast, we want to help you move your life forward. We want to help you get unstuck, but not just get unstuck. We want you to become unstoppable. That's the goal. It's like, man, we want to be along this journey, and relationships are a key. I always say, and you hear me say it all the time, relationships are really the currency of life.
Oh, 100%.
So show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You guys have probably all heard that.
Yeah.
But my pastor also says, show us your five closest friends.
You're the sum total of your five closest friends.
You're the sum total.
Yes.
Which leads me into a survey that you and I were researching and looking. We talked about, hey, how many average friends how many friends does the average American have?
This is so interesting. So we were actually looking at this, you know, it's the American Life Society. They do all of these surveys. So in 1990, they had a survey, and then in 2021, they had one. So 49% of people have three or less close friends. 3 or less.
Isn't that amazing? And if we're the sum of our five closest, that means your circle has gotten so much smaller.
Close people that are influencing your life and breathing into your life, you know?
And then what happens when those relationships end?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now it's like I'm going from 3 to 2.
Yeah, or to 0.
To 0.
Well, and the other interesting thing that I think is really almost alarming is that number of people who said they had no friends went from 3% in 1990 to 12% in 2021.
12%. And so if we're talking to you today, and if this is you, maybe you find yourself, the friend list is shrinking.
Yeah.
First off, I want you to know it's normal. Like life happens, things can happen. Maybe you move, circumstances, situations. You know, friendships have to be reciprocated. And I think in what we've gone through the last couple of years, there have been a lot of people that have begun to isolate themselves. So you can't make people come out. But what you can do is be intentional that I'm not going to choose to live this way.
Absolutely. And I think we also have to undo the paradigm that I think has been really prevalent recently, which is the no new friends, right? People almost wear a badge badge of honor of, I don't need people. I don't need you. I can do things by myself. And the truth is, if we just get all the way down to it, we need people. We need relationships. We need people that we can be open, honest, vulnerable with, share our hurts, habits, and our hang-ups with, and do life with. And that's how I think we can continue to make progress to move forward and be unstoppable together.
Well, I think you said that, it's real relationships.
Yeah.
Here's what we got to be careful of. I was thinking about the culprit. Why are we where we're at relationally? As a pastor, and you're a pastor as well, we get to pastor this great church. We're constantly thinking about people and relationships. And of course, to us, it's so natural. One of our beliefs is that it's in relationships that we experience healing, because you find someone who knows the good, bad, the ugly, and loves you anyway.
Yep.
And then there's real healing that comes from that. James chapter 1 verse 5 says, James 5:1 or 13 says, that
we got it.
We'll put it in the show notes.
It's in James.
It's in James, and James 5:16. There great. You go. That's hilarious. And we're not going to edit that out because it's real.
It's authentic.
And there it is.
Yes.
But James 5:16 says that we confess our faults to one another.
Yeah.
And then what do? We experience healing. And so God even created relationships. It's, 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our faults to God, he is faithful and just to forgive us. So forgiveness comes from God. But isn't it interesting how that healing comes in the context of relationships? And that's what we've got to make sure that we're focusing on. Whether you're a believer or not, relationships really are the key. And you were just thinking about what would be a cause of the deterioration of real friendships. Because
I want to talk about this.
Yeah, back in the day, a friend, well, let's talk about the culprit, and then we can go into, there's two of them, we'll say them. The first one we talked and alluded to was really this global crisis that we walked through. We all went through it. Nobody went through it unscathed.
Right, 100%.
And we were told to isolate and separate and all that for the greater good. Okay. But the problem is some people never came back out of isolation.
Yeah, 100%.
And so that's part of it. Not a lot you can do with it there. The second thing that we're just kind of touch on a little bit, social media.
100%. I think it went hand in hand too. And so that's what I was alluding to, is you have this global crisis. And the truth is, when we were in the middle of it, I was like, thank God for social media, because I can check in on people.
Connected.
We're not isolated, is what I kept saying, is, we have relationships. But the truth is, social media is it's just not a great replacement for real intimacy, just we said. And the truth is, then it's already a highlight reel. And so we're highlighting things, and we're highlighting some of the bad, but
you don't highlight the bad. Don't lie. Ain't nobody selfie their bad hair day.
During isolation, maybe a little bit. We talked about, we shared about how we all wore, our pajama pants and a top for Zoom calls. So we did share a little bit. We were a little bit more intimate, but it's hard. You can't be intimate with thousands of people.
And again, it goes. We always put our best foot forward. Never really wanting to expose the worst part of me, but that's not a real intimate relationship. And I can just imagine when I said digital connection is not the same as relational intimacy. If you're a guy, you're like, relational intimacy. Like, I thought but you got to have that guy, that tribe, those friends that you can say, hey, here's me on my bad day, here's me on my good day, here's all of me, because that is still how God created you, whether you're a man or a woman.
100%. There's a great book. I'm thinking, so it's called Naked and Unafraid by Kevin Gerald. So oh my gosh. So I know he's a great friend of yours, but his book is phenomenal, and it talks about the need for vulnerability.
Yes.
And that's the intimacy, because intimacy says, here, I'm going to share everything about myself and allow you to still see it all and show me that you love me regardless of who I am, when the mask is off. And so realizing that, look, social media, and we did a little bit of this, looked up some stats and things. There's the average Facebook user, which, typically mid-40s to late 30s, you're on Facebook, 229 friends. Yep.
That's what Facebook calls them.
Yeah, on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, it's what, 1,000 to 10,000 followers.
Yeah, the average. Somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000.
Yeah, and then TikTok is 1,000 to 5,000.
Yep.
And so you would think with all this digital connection, people would be healthier than they've ever been, more connected, happier, more fulfilled. And what we're seeing is it's actually the opposite, because you're connected, but you're alone and isolated.
Wow.
And that's a lot of times where the depression comes in. And even if you've seen it, just we compare ourselves with someone's best highlight reel, their best moment, with the way we really live in life.
Yeah.
And so our comparison is based on a fallacy.
Right.
It's not real life, it's the highlight reel.
Yeah.
And so then you don't feel, I don't know about you, I rarely feel better about myself when I get off social media.
Yeah, I even am imagining as we're talking about this, it's just people, we sit in dark rooms, right, by ourselves, and we scroll on quote unquote social media and are just consuming, the worlds of other people, or
That's
we'll
right.
sit with other family members and still be on social media, not going deeper in relationship.
Well, not funny.
But just,
How many times have you walked into a restaurant and
Yeah.
the family is sitting down to do
Yep.
dinner? We go eat at a local steakhouse down here, and I just kind of look around, and it is so interesting. Everybody's on their phone.
Wow.
And like you said, I bet most of it's social media. Who liked my post?
Right.
What are they saying?
Yeah.
And so you're relationally present, or you're physically present, but relationally distant.
Yes.
You're gone.
Yeah.
You've checked out. And I found it interesting. I watched an interview with some young people recently, and they were talking about their lives, the internet, and really social media and the impact. And look at it, just a few things. Here's 3 things that they said. The more I use social media, the more I crave personal interaction. Wasn't that the opposite of what you would think?
Right.
Like the more I use it, I'm
You should be
interacting.
filled up.
I'm filled up.
Yeah.
My cup is full.
Yep.
It's a pseudo filling. It's a false filling.
Right.
It's
You
so
need more.
You got to
Yep.
have more. It's superficial.
Yep.
It's kind of like eating snacks.
Right.
and
You just
living
need
on
a
junk
meal.
food. You need a meal, and the real meal comes through relationships.
Yeah.
The second thing they said was, I feel more connected than ever, and yet I feel more alone. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is, all I know to do is click, click, scroll, scroll, click, 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 scroll, scroll, scroll.
Wow.
That's all I know how to do. So in other words, what they're saying is,
Wow.
I can post, I can scroll, I can click, but if you put me in the room with someone, they don't even have basic relational skills.
Wow.
Communication skills, like how do you start a conversation? I mean, if you ever put a younger generation in a room, it's very funny. They're all in there and everybody's on their phone.
Yep.
And they would rather text each other
Yeah.
than talk to each other.
It's funny. It's like when with babies, they do independent play. So all babies will sit in a classroom, but they'll play separate. Like they're playing with each other separately.
Wow.
And it takes maturity for them to play
Interact.
together.
Wow.
And interact together. And so we've gone all the way backwards.
A little
to
bit
our-
immature in our relational skills.
Yes,
And it's a
yeah.
big concern. And I think it's a reason that people get stuck in life. You don't have that person that you're doing life, those people you're doing life
Yep.
with. And I would say you need a minimum of 5. I had some situations happen recently, and it's hard when a relationship kind of blows up, and whether intentional or unintentional. And so if you don't have multiple layers of friendships,
Then where
it
do you
doesn't take
go?
long for those relationships to be eroded. So
great.
you got to, and that's what I wanted to do here. We
How
have
do we do it?
4
Yeah.
things, very practical, and we're not going to spend a lot of time.
Practical.
Our job is just to stir you, and then you go check out more resources on the website, and we're going to help you with it. But really, 4 practical tips on building relationships.
Yes.
On building relationships. Now, next podcast, we're going to talk about what to do when relationships have ended, and how come they end, and
Right.
how can we keep them from ending.
That's great.
Which I think is going to be a powerful
Talking
conflict, and
about
how do
to
you
have
resolve
healthy
it. Yep.
conflict. I love healthy
So it's
conflict.
going to be good. 4 things, just real quick. The first one is, if you're going to build healthy relationships, you got to be intentional.
It's great.
Intentional. And so what we're talking about intentionality is, we interact with people. Maybe it's at your job, maybe it's at your church, maybe it's at your neighborhood. But if you're not intentional, you can live in a neighborhood and never really know your neighbors.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And so the intentionality, I'm not saying that your neighbor's the one you want to do life with, but there ought to be somebody that you're intentional about. We walk
Right.
into churches, we pastor a great church here. You can come in each and every Sunday and never build one
It's
relationship.
surprising because it happens all
All the time. Come
Yeah.
in, slip out. We
Yep.
got multiple services. So being physically present doesn't mean that you're being intentional.
Yep, and that's going back to what we talked about last week, which is the calendar, and what your priorities are. Intentionality comes with setting aside the time to spend with people that you want to go deeper
right.
in relationship with.
And be picky. Like, but just be intentional. Say, hey, I'd like to spend more time with you.
Yep.
I met someone the other day. I said, hey, I'd like to spend more time with you. Would that be okay if I called and we
That's
go out on a
great.
date with our wives? And so I think the intentionality. Otherwise, what happens is you become a victim. Nobody likes me. Nobody wants to be around me.
Right.
And you're just waiting for others. Here's the other thing I'd say: if someone invites you
Do
to
it.
go have lunch, do it.
I'm
Someone
sorry.
says, hey, let's go have dinner with our wives. Say, yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely a Jolea. If somebody invites you, actually go.
Go.
Yeah.
Don't say
Yeah.
you're busy, because everybody's busy, but you got to
That's
have
great.
relationships.
That's really great.
Second thing is you got to be, now this is once you're out with the person, and again, there's other things you could do. We just want to give you some practical advice. I would say this: be intentional, be present.
Yes. Yeah.
Be present. And so I've made the intentionality of going on a date with you. Now I want to be present and be engaged.
Yeah. That's so good. It's so important because I think we can, just like we were talking about, you can be in the same room and be in a completely different
That's right.
place.
100%. Yeah, because you tend to, like, I don't know about you, but I've met and we've had dinner with friends, but I had a problem here at the church, and I go into there and I'm worried about my problem. I'm worried about the situation. And then have you ever been in a place where you lay your phone down and it's phone up, not phone down, screen up, not
Yeah.
screen down? And so when you go out to these places, put screen down.
Yeah.
Like, I'm present with you. I'm engaged with you.
Yeah.
You're the most important thing in this
I
moment.
love the sign of putting your phone down. So this is another within the practical tip, taking your phone and putting it down flat when I am in my one-on-ones with my team members, when I'm at home having dinner with my family. It's just a sign. And when you go out to eat with somebody, if you put your phone down flat,
Yes.
it says you are the most important,
You're
because
important.
technology, social media rules a lot of our lives. And so to put it down just it's actually a great sign of saying you are the most important
most
thing right
important.
now. I'm turning everything
Yeah.
off and I'm focusing on you.
Well, and I know it's hard. Dr. Tim Elmore has a new book coming out, and he talks about generational experiences and how that there is such a gap in the different generations. And one of the things he talks about, I forget the title of his book coming out, put me on the spot, but he talks about how even millennials, for us, we see this as a sign of respect because it bothers us. But and I realize this: if you're a millennial and you're listening, millennials actually look at the phone as an extension of who they are. And so I don't know what the balance is, but I also know that when I've sat down with people and their phone is up and it is an extension of they're not really connected with
Right.
me.
I don't feel like they're focused on me.
And so we've got to say, hey, listen, I'm going to be relational. I'm going to be engaged in this moment, fully present. And then here's the other thing. I think it's important not to just make it a text or a phone call. Like, relationships can be built in that way. But remember the day when a relationship was built, it's because I came over to your house and we ate dinner.
Right. Yeah.
We went, as kids, we went and played.
Yeah. Well, looking
Had
back at
shared
that survey,
experiences.
looking at that survey too, in 1990, the amount of people that had a lot of friends the percentage was way higher. And I just think, what didn't we have? We didn't have text messages. You couldn't maintain, quote unquote, a relationship with text. You had to be present. You had to go to dinner. You had to do those things. And it seems like people thrived with healthier relationships.
Well,
back then.
text message, all that's not a shared experience.
Right.
So we want to experience life together. We want to have shared experiences. And really that happens in the present when you're fully engaged. And then the last thing is I would say once you begin to develop a friendship with someone, be consistent.
So good.
I think that is really important. I actually calendar
That's
my
great.
phone calls and my dinners. Like, we have a group where we go out every quarter. And it's never easy. It's never convenient. But it's like, hey, we're going to go hang out every 3 months. So,
Right.
I help to lead that. And I think you got to have someone that kind of organizes it.
Yeah.
But then I've got all my other friends. I probably have about 5 or 6 that are really close and deep to me and have been for quite some
Yeah.
time. I'm open for new relationships, but I put them on the calendar. I call them
Right.
either every week. There's some I call every day, and
Yeah.
then some I call every month.
Yeah.
But it's the intentionality of, I'm going to follow up. I'm going to be consistent. And again, if you wait on the other person, now you're a victim.
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
trying to help you get unstuck. So my pastor always just told me, if I take responsibility, I can do something about it.
Yeah.
And so I just always assume it's my responsibility to get us together.
Yep.
And
And
then,
spend time.
yeah, once we make it happen, and then we actually have a rule with our friends that we get together every quarter. Once we've agreed to a date you can't back out.
That's great.
Unless it's a death or an absolute
an
emergency.
emergency.
Because then that's the resolve and the commitment of, hey, we're all going to commit because we're all busy. We all have a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage you, if you're feeling alone and isolated, or you recognize, man, I'm in a lonely place.
Yep.
I want to encourage you, be intentional.
Yep.
I want to encourage you, be present and engaged, and then be
consistent.
consistent.
I will say too, on the consistency front, I actually had to practice this year. I was sitting around and I'm praying about this exact thing. Like, God, who are the people that you've called me to surround myself with? And he highlighted just one person. And he was like, you need to be consistent in that relationship. Awesome. And so I went up to that person. She's a mom, she's busy just like I am, has a lot moving. And I was like, well, every other Thursday, let's just go get breakfast. Let's start our morning. We've dropped the kids off. We have time. I know you have time.
That's awesome.
Let's just go get breakfast. And what it does is it creates at least just a moment where you can be vulnerable and open with somebody. It's on your calendar. And I do it just like counseling. I'm like, I got a lot of things to tell you. I've been bottling this up for 2 weeks. Let's awesome. Catch up. But it's healthy. It's really healthy and it's worth it.
Well, and I'm excited. Next week, we're going to talk about how to have a healthy friendship. I think we assume everybody knows how to have a healthy friendship. And then what do you do when someone that you really cared about, that relationship has deteriorated? That's like great. What are some things we can do? And so I'm super excited about that, and hope this touched you today. I hope you've been able to take something away. Go visit the website, jimkyles.com. We got lots of free resources. Go to the resource tab, got PDF ebooks that are free. And then, hey, buy my book. My new book comes out. It'll be in a couple of weeks. You'll probably be listening to this after it's been out. So I just want to encourage you, go buy it. It's called Unstuck and Unstoppable. I hope it's a great resource for you, and really believe it'll bless your life. It's not just a book. It's not a one-dimensional book. It's really a resource with multi-dimensions to help you get unstuck and become unstoppable. And so we're thrilled to have you join us. Would you please share the podcast?
Yep. Review it for us. If you're enjoying it, we'd love to hear your story and hear how this podcast is impacting your life.
That's right. And then join us on social media. We do lots of things on Facebook. I think we're doing a Facebook Zoom this week.
Yep.
And we're interacting with whoever jumps on the Zoom call. So if you'll go to Unstuck and Unstoppable on Facebook and all the social media outlets, then what we'll do is you'll be able to see what's happening. We'd love to connect with you.
Absolutely.
Also, we have a one-day. It's Unstuck and Unstoppable one day called Behind the Scenes.
October 22nd.
October 22nd. It's going to be in Richmond. Go to jimkyles.com. If you want to get registered. It's going to be a one-day event. And if you're a business owner, if you're a pastor, if you're a leader, maybe you're a manager, someone that leads teams, we're going to talk about how to build an identity for your organization, how to clarify your purpose, create vision. And then we're also going to talk about culture. That's the intangible.
So important,
and how to create a healthy, life-giving culture. And so it's going to be a great one day. I want to invite you to be out at our Richmond one-day Unstuck and Unstoppable. So, all right, well, until next week, we love you guys. God bless.
See ya.